Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm Dupe Witherick, alcohol free wellbeing and transformational coach, and the best selling author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity, and Thrive Alcohol Free. This podcast will show you that being alcohol-free is not what the traditional narrative says. And even though alcohol is so ingrained in our society that it is okay to give yourself permission to stop drinking if you want to. And you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottom. It is certainly not boring, and I believe ditching drinking is just the start to living an extraordinary life. By getting rid of this one thing, it allows the doors to open to endless possibilities and opportunities. Each week, we will have guests on who are at various stages of the alcohol-free journey, from those who are curious to those who have been alcohol-free for years. We will also have experts on talking about different topics relating to alcohol and beyond. Through these conversations, you will discover what it means to thrive alcohol-free. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm so pleased you're here and listening, and I hope you've had the best week. I am currently overlooking beautiful sea and sand and the pool in Bali. So I am feeling quite rested and rejuvenated. We arrived last week, and it's just been amazing. It's been so lovely to have some warm weather and not to be in the rain. And so for everyone back in the UK, I'm sending warm sunshine to you and hope you're doing well. Because I know when I left, it wasn't really the summer we were hoping for. It hasn't been so far, but hopefully the sun will come. So hopefully the sunshine vibes will come to you. All right. Well, it's been a really interesting time. We've relaxed and rejuvenated a little bit, but also explored. And we've been going to these what they call warungs, which are small restaurants and local restaurants. And there was one warung that we went to, which had a fabulous sign outside with lots of different messages. And you can see that on Instagram. And so I thought I'd highlight that to you because it was really interesting. I ended up thinking about how so many of the messages applied to being alcohol free. So I thought it would be fun to share this with you. So things you feel when you are alcohol free: peace, love, and joy. Things you can do more of when you're alcohol free. So you can do more of what makes you happy. You can live, laugh, and love. You can be grateful. You can eat well, which equals sleeping well. And you can think big. And then when you're alcohol free, you realize that life is a beautiful ride. And so if you're interested in looking at that sign, as I said, it was really cool. Go on there and have a look. And the other thing that I was thinking about when I was lying in the pool, just chilling out, was how we need to learn to authentically rest and recuperate, which is a key part of thriving alcohol free. And I remember when I was drinking, I found I struggled to rest. I think a lot of people struggle to be in their own thoughts, to do things like yoga and meditate, to sit still, because we just find ourselves, our thoughts are worrying, we're maybe anxious about things, we're worried about things. And of course, life happens, we still get stressed. But I think when you stop drinking, you have the tools and you have the knowledge to help you to actually cope with that stress in a positive way. And actually you are aware of your body and when it needs to rest and recuperate. And so learning to rest and recuperate is a key skill. And that's something that I teach as part of my Thrive AF method as well. And so having the toolkit and really knowing how to rest and recuperate in an authentic way that serves you is really important. So if you want to learn this skill, then it's certainly something that I do within my Thrive AF method, which is an essential step by step. And so feel free to head to my website or to my Instagram for free resources that you can download to help you. And then feel free to get in touch if you would like to learn more about ditching drinking. But it's really not just the ditching drinking, it's the thriving. It's the making alcohol insignificant. It's the embodying the joyful new life and new identity, and then the thriving alcohol free, and actually living a life alcohol free that you really love, and that you're not white knuckling, you're not feeling like you're depriving yourself. And through the Thrive AF method, you do get that essential step by step to help you on that journey. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to get in touch, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, today's guest is Corina Goetz, and again, a slightly different angle from where this is coming from. Of course, the reason she's on it is she is alcohol free, and the key reason she did it was to do with health. But it's always interesting to hear these stories. Corina Goetz is the CEO of Starcat, a Middle Eastern advisory training and consulting company. For more than 20 years, she's worked with leaders from the Gulf, royal family, and business people who trust her implicitly. One of her many achievements was helping to grow a company from 0 clients from this region to 6 million annual turnover. Since creating Starcat, her mission has taken her all over the world, educating and assisting companies doing better business in this dynamic region that is the Gulf. And for me, it's a really good conversation, but also it reminded me of when I worked in Dubai for 6 months. And it was so interesting because it has quite a big expat community. But at the time, alcohol was only served in places, and so restaurants, establishments that were connected to hotels. And you would always find lots of people going to these places because it was the only place you could get booze. And if you were an expat, you also needed a license to buy alcohol. And there were only a couple of places you could actually buy alcohol. So it was a really interesting place to be. And what I also noticed that people were based in Saudi would come over to Dubai just to have drinks because in Saudi you couldn't drink alcohol. So it was something that people would do to be able to get a drink. And so it's a really interesting part of the world. For me now, I'm thinking it's great that they don't drink, and they did offer like mocktails and different things that people could have. But at the time, I was obviously drinking, and so it was all about where can we get a drink, where can we go out and have a drink, and everything revolved around alcohol. So why not? But now I'm thinking they probably had the right idea to not for their nations not to drink, because obviously they have thrived over the years. I mean, Dubai was a small fishing market. It was hot, it was desert. And so the transformation over the past 30 years or so has been incredible. For anyone who's been to Dubai, you will see all the skyscrapers, Burj Khalifa and everything else. That's all come up in the past. I think the Burj Khalifa had only just opened in 2011 when I was there. And so there is a good thing for not drinking maybe in those countries. And other parts of the region, you know, Qatar held the World Cup, and Saudi is growing as well. And so I think it's a really interesting area. And I do wonder whether alcohol and not drinking had something to do with it. Anyway, I hope you find this episode interesting and just a bit different, but obviously always with the theme of not drinking. So without further ado, here is the conversation with Corina. Enjoy. Well, welcome, Corina. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate you being here. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yay, that's fantastic. Okay, so I ask everyone this for people that might not know you. What brings you to being on the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, firstly, and I think we can explore that in a little bit, I don't drink. I've never been a big drinker, but it's also something that's quite interesting because it's quite closely related with my work. So I've worked with locals from the Middle East for a long time, and now I teach companies on Middle Eastern culture and how they can build better relationships and how they generally can do better business in the Middle East. And obviously, alcohol is a big topic because for the local population, that's a no-go due to the religion. And so I thought it's a great fit in a way.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I will definitely we'll definitely talk about that. I worked in Dubai for 6 months or so, over Ramadan as well. I was there over Ramadan, and
Oh.
I just remember it's a really interesting culture. And then I also remember the expat environment and how much they did drink, even though you technically can't or shouldn't. And then it also reminds me of people in Saudi who would come over the bridge to get to Dubai to have a weekend away because they knew that they could. At the time, I think you could only drink in places attached to hotels, but I don't know if that's still the case. But again, people would just sort of cross the bridge and then know they could go and have drinks, especially the expat community. So yeah, I'm fascinated by this. But did you stop drinking before you started that job, or what was the reason that you said you didn't drink
Um,
very much, but what led you to not drinking?
Well, this is actually a bit of a longer story. I mean, I stopped completely drinking during COVID, but it was very much health related because I had COVID and then I started getting these seizures where you like literally pass out and you also like you have no signs of this coming on. It just happens. And then I started seeing a couple of specialists, and one of the things that came up, they did a variety of tests, and they were like, "Well, alcohol doesn't really agree with your body, and even though you don't drink very much, we recommend that it's something you would stop." And
Mm,
to be honest, because I was never a big drinker anyway, it wasn't really a massive sacrifice for me. So I was like, okay, if that's what it takes, then that's fine. I can live with that. And I
mm,
haven't really touched anything since. But like I said before, it was quite funny. I was never really much into alcohol, and it was just the taste just wasn't necessarily me. I would drink, of course, on social occasions, but I could never say that I had a session where I don't know, I blacked out or something, or I couldn't remember anything. Like
mm.
to the contrary, I was always known in my family when we would go for birthdays and things like that. I was always known as the driver. Oh, Corina doesn't drink. She can be the driver. I'm like, okay. So, yeah, so it wasn't really a massive sacrifice, but I think with health then playing a much bigger role, I just thought, okay, this is the right thing to do. And I haven't really looked back since.
Mm, mm. And it's interesting because, if you don't mind me saying, you're German. So when I think about trips I've done to Germany, it was all about the beer festivals and I'm trying to think of what the traditional word is, but where they all wear
Oh,
lederhosen
like the
and
you're thinking Oktoberfest.
Oktoberfest, exactly, exactly. There's a big drinking culture in Germany from that perspective, isn't there?
Huge, huge. I mean, even in like my own family, they would be like, "You're the odd one out. This is just really bizarre. Why are you the only one
Mm,
not drinking?" Or people used to say to me, even when I came to London, and they used to say to me, "But you're German. You should be drinking. This is just really weird. Why are you not drinking?" I'm like, I don't know. I just don't like it. So
yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting. And it's great that you also had that because a lot of people who I work with and people that I meet who have recently stopped drinking or are thinking they want to stop, one of the reasons that they think they can't is because everyone around them drinks. Everyone around them, that's the culture, that's what is ingrained in society. But it sounds like you had that foresight to not care and just sort of this is me. I don't enjoy it that much, so I'll have the odd drink, but I'm not going to feel the social pressure to drink. Is that correct?
Yeah, 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 totally. And looking back at it, I don't think it's anything that I did very consciously, but I can totally see how this is such a divisive subject and how
Mm,
people would feel left out. I mean, I remember thinking it was odd
mm,
working and then people after work going to the pub for hours on end. And I just
mm,
was like, no, I just have no interest in that. But you are right, because especially if you had like this bonding culture going on and maybe
mm,
some of your managers went,
mm.
you would feel like you're the only person who wouldn't go. But it just, I don't actually know why it never really bothered me. I was like, no, I'm just not enjoying this. Why should I waste my time? And maybe it was more like I thought, why should I waste my money on something that I don't really enjoy? So no, I'm
Yeah,
not going to go.
yeah.
But it's so interesting because it's such a divisive subject, especially when it comes to the Middle East. So I have to tell you a funny story. So
Mm,
recently I put up a post on my Instagram account, and it was a repost from the Saudi tourism minister who had given a speech and said, we in Saudi, because Saudi is, as of now, the pretty much the only country where you can't get alcohol, not even in the hotel. And so he had said, well, we have decided not to introduce alcohol because we feel people can enjoy themselves, they can see what the country has to offer. So, and I put that up and I said with a post saying, obviously I don't really drink. And when you travel, I don't think it takes away from the enjoyment if you don't drink. Oh my God, that post went mental. And I literally got slayed for it. They're like, this is crazy. Why would they not allow it? And people had such divisive opinions on it. I was like, wow, I did not see this one coming. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. But that I think kind of sums up what a lot of people feel like with this.
Yeah, and as you say, it is one of the only countries that doesn't allow it, but also people associate holidays. It's a big thing. We talk about how to navigate alcohol-free firsts when you stop drinking. And one of the big things is, how am I going to go on a holiday? How am I going to get on a flight? People are used to going into the airport, and at whatever time they're flying, they'll go and get a drink, and that's the start of the holiday, or they'll book an all-inclusive place so they know that they can have their cocktails the whole time they're there, or whatever it is. And so it is a bit of a culture thing, because people think they can't go on holiday without drinking. So why would they go to Saudi and enjoy it? And it's not
Totally.
true. It's so not true.
No, but it even went as far as I mean, at the minute from the UK, if you want to go direct to Saudi, there's only two airlines that are flying. One is British Airways and the other one is Saudia. And people would be like, we would never go with Saudia because they don't offer alcohol.
Yeah.
And BA does until they are in Saudi airspace.
Yeah.
So loads of people that I know would all go on just this BA flight. And when you actually compared the two, in terms of service, Saudia was so much better. They had better planes, the service was better, the people were much nicer. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, it went to that extent that people would book a different airline just to get their kick.
Before they land. Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting. And I have to say, I've been able to fly business for a lot of the trips that I've done. And I did Qatar business. I think I was going to India or somewhere. And they had some amazing alcohol-free drinks on there. And there was this alcohol-free fizz that I'd never heard of, which was, I think it was French. But you'd get this for £40 a bottle. This is a really decent alcohol-free, but again, people were drinking the normal champagne. I was like, but this is just as good. So why wouldn't you just go for that when you get off the plane feeling amazing? And it
Mm.
always makes me laugh because, again, no judgment. People can choose to do whatever they want to do. And I was one of these people. You'd get on the flight, and the whole thing was, you'd get on, if you were flying business, you'd be given a glass of champagne. You sit down feeling very glamorous and sophisticated. You'd have your champagne, and then they'd ask you, what do you want next? And then you'd go on to the gin and tonic, and you'd have some wine with your meal. And before you know it, you've had a fair number of drinks before you even get off the plane. And I go on flights now, and I literally watch people, and you see where they start from, and then you land, and you're looking around, and people just look like, I'm just about to go for a meeting now, this business flight or whatever, and they look like they need to go to sleep, but that is what business travel was about. And so it's really interesting. I think the whole travel and alcohol concept, I can imagine why you got slated. You shouldn't have been, but it does bring up emotions, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. But isn't it interesting that I feel like a lot of the younger generation are not such heavy drinkers
It's true.
nowadays. I feel it's not so much, or there's a lot more pushback now, I think, with that whole kind of, no, we don't have to drink if we don't want to, and why would we go like on a boozy night? But maybe it's also because some of the marketing and things has changed, and it's interesting to your point with the business travel, I think it was always very glamorized. You
Yeah.
were sitting there with your glass of champagne, and there just wasn't any alternative. You would never see anything else in advertising. Like that was the thing. So people naturally thought, okay, I've made it. I'm sitting in business class with my glass of champagne.
You've hit the high, you were there. It's absolutely true. And it's so lovely to see that younger people, and the reason I started drinking like most people. It was university. You go to university, that first week at university, it was Freshers' Week, and that was when you were meeting people, you were joining new clubs and new things, and it all revolved around let's go for a drink, let's do this. We've got this night out planned as this group, we've got this night, and so then you just sort of get into that culture. What I love to hear now is that they're offering alcohol-free options as well as the alcoholic options, which you never had before. So as you say, it was just not something that was publicized. So there's the choice. I think it's a health thing as well. I think people are a lot healthier and a lot more mindful of being healthy, and they don't see alcohol as something that helps them stay consistent when it comes to their health. But then also, I do think social media has had a lot to do with it. People don't want to be filmed and then put on social media looking a certain way. So I think that the generation has been a bit more guarded in terms of how they come across, not letting loose too much to be seen in a negative way and all of that. So I think there's a combination of things that have happened over the years, but I'm so grateful for it. And I'm hoping I've got a 10-year-old, your son's about the same age, isn't
Yeah, he's
he?
nearly 12. Yeah.
Yeah, nearly 12. So I'm hoping that generation just will feel like they have the choice. It's not a big deal. Whatever they decide to do, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. No one pushes anything on them, which would be amazing. But I do think people that are sort of 30s onwards still have very much the mentality that this is what you do. So
Mm.
yeah. But I'm curious about the health thing. That was really interesting because seizures, gosh, and are you feeling a lot better now? Do you have
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
less?
I've been changing a lot of like different things. I think a lot of it is also lifestyle, being very conscious of certain things. Sleep is a big thing for me. A lot of them actually happened, weirdly enough, when I was traveling, but it was a very odd thing because they happened in this 4 months rhythm.
Mm.
And most of them happened when I was in Saudi. I mean, like the most
Oh,
random.
really?
And I think it was a combination of because every single time it happens, I hadn't really slept like enough. I hadn't had enough rest. There was something going on that was really stressful. I hadn't taken
Mm.
certain vitamins. I was quite deficient on certain things. So it's taken me on this journey to really like look at my health in a much different way. And yeah, and I mean, alcohol was not the main trigger, but it was just
Mm.
one of the things that they said would be good to eliminate because it can be a trigger. And it's so interesting because one of the things that I've learned is as well that very often I think we want to put things like this down to like one cause when
Mm.
the reality is it's probably a multiple
Mm.
amount of things. So yeah, so I was
Mm.
like, okay, I will do whatever it takes because I really want to try and find another way.
Mm. Yeah, and the reason I say it's fascinating is because I've had a couple of people on the podcast who have gone through breast cancer, and
Oh, wow.
alcohol is a carcinogen, and so it actually is linked to 7 types of cancer. It's also linked to about 200 illnesses. But when they have got through, they've gone into remission, their doctors have all said, "Oh, you can keep drinking. Oh, it's fine." And so it's interesting that certainly for seizures you've been told no alcohol, but then for other things people don't link alcohol with them. And so these people carried on drinking. They didn't feel like there was anything
Wow.
wrong, you know. But obviously, they've since become alcohol free, and they're like, I want more people to realize that actually there is a real link between alcohol and it's similar to things like anxiety and depression and stress, and it exacerbates those things. It doesn't alleviate it, even though that's what people think. But again, when they give out antidepressants, they don't say how much you're drinking or see whether or not alcohol's a big feature, and then the medication on top of the alcohol just doesn't help. So there's definitely a there's not a correlation, it seems, at the moment with a number of doctors or health professionals, and that needs to change. And so I'm really pleased that at least with seizures, they've said, right, well, that's definitely a no-no. So that,
Well, it's actually interesting that you brought this up because the doctors actually didn't necessarily say that, but I went down a more holistic route.
ah, Okay.
And that sort of holistic practitioner was more like, let's look at everything. And basically she made me do a really advanced DNA test where they tested lots of different things. And then she explained to me afterwards on the test that, and one of the things they tested was alcohol, but they also tested things like coffee,
Mm,
salt. And so there were a couple of different things. They were also like,
mm,
she was like, you're not as bad with coffee, but you're not great. She's like,
mm,
if you can try and limit coffee intake as well, that'd be good.
mm.
So I've tried on that as well. And then I used to be the person who would put salt on everything. I love my salt. And she was like, you're not good with salt. So you kind of need to get rid of that too. I'm like, oh, what else? So, and that was interesting because I had been to quite a few doctors, and
Mm,
very interestingly that you said with like antidepressants, they all wanted to put
mm,
me on medication. And I was very
mm,
much like, well, I kind of want to get to the root cause of this. I'm not
exactly.
disagreeing 100%, but I
Mm,
think I want to see where this came from. There's got to be a
mm,
reason for this, and I want to get to the bottom of it and what, like, okay, I don't know if you can ever get 100% to the bottom of it, but I want to also see what lifestyle has to do with this. And
mm.
that wasn't necessarily something they were willing to explore to that extent. So I
Yeah.
had to go and find other avenues, which I did, and I'm glad I did because it really led me down a much better path. And I think that's really interesting that you said that about cancer, because I think that's also, I'm not saying this is everything, but I think food and lifestyle plays a massive role in
Mm,
cancers as well. And if you,
mm,
like you said, if you keep drinking after you had this, well,
mm,
you're probably not supporting your body enough.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, so that's why I was fascinated when you said the doctor had said it. So it goes back to the point that there is an education piece, I think, that needs to happen within our healthcare professionals. And I think that one of the reasons, I'm generalizing, obviously, but in terms of a lot of doctors drink themselves and nurses and everyone else, so they don't see, or if they do see the issue, they don't want to talk about it because it's basically reflecting what they're doing as well. And I've got GP friends, and GP friends have said to me, well, as long as you're not drinking a bottle of vodka a day, you're fine. I'm like, well, that's not really what we should be saying. So
No.
there's a long way to go.
Yeah, yeah. But I think like with everything, I think it's all about education, and also I think taking ownership yourself. And I think maybe
Mm,
that sometimes is something that we never really learned. We've always learned, okay, if there's an issue, you go and see somebody, but it's not like, okay, look at yourself. What are you doing? And do some of these things that you are doing maybe not benefit you? But we've never really learned that in school. So I think there's a massive education piece to be done. And then, of
mm,
course, to your point, the whole kind of socializing and everything
mm,
is so interesting. I mean, it's so funny because sometimes when I had some of my Middle Eastern friends and we would go to dinner and they would be like, "Oh, but you can have a glass of wine, no problem." I'm like, "No, but I just generally don't want to." And
mm.
they would think also because they've been conditioned to believe that everybody in the West just always drinks. They're like, no,
Yeah.
no, but we can order a glass of wine. I'm like, no, I don't want one. So it was so interesting that that was a thing. It's, yeah.
So tell us a bit more then about the Middle East. I think it's fascinating. So why don't you tell us a bit more about that Middle East Western culture and how that amalgamates and what you do and things like that? That'd be great.
Well, it's quite interesting because I think especially now there's a massive spotlight on the Middle East because they are developing so fast and there's so many
Mm,
different things going on. And obviously
mm,
lots of people from the UK have been on holiday to Dubai and they're quite familiar with it. But to me, Dubai is not the Middle East. Dubai is like a massive expat city. You know, the locals are not really in Dubai. Of course, there are some, but the real locals are more like in
yeah.
Abu Dhabi and places. And of course, they come to Dubai, but they don't live there full time necessarily always.
I mean,
So,
what is the percentage? I thought I remember it being like a 4% are actual Emiratis and the rest are expats from different
I mean,
countries.
the
It's a really small
expats
percentage,
have
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and the expats have exploded, and with the whole kind of Russia-Ukraine situation,
Mm.
yeah, I think there's been about 1 million Eastern European, whether that be Russians, Ukrainians, that have moved to Dubai in the past, I think, year. And that's why
Wow.
Dubai, suddenly the real estate is so crazy. And literally every month you read about it, they make more, they have more expensive apartments, they sell more houses because the demand is just so crazy. And
Mm.
then, of course, I think like now we all know with the recession, a lot of people moving there for tax advantages and things like that.
Mm.
So like Dubai is really just an expat city. But what is interesting, and that's where I do a lot of work, is Saudi, because Saudi is the
Mm.
big unknown that people that obviously was closed for years and years and people couldn't go. And then once people could go, especially women, they had a lot of questions. They're like, oh my God, are they even going to deal with me? And how should I dress? And that's where I do a lot of my work, like now, where I help companies and explain to them, what does Saudi want to achieve? What are these projects? Where are the opportunities? And when you go there to pitch for a project or a service, how do you need to prepare yourself so you don't walk in there thinking you know it all and you lose the deal because you just are not aware of what is actually going on in Saudi. And you would be surprised how many companies think they could just walk in with that same business mentality that they have in the UK or in the US, and
Mm.
it just doesn't work. And they don't, but it's not working. Like they're not signing the deal. I'm like, yes, because you haven't taken time enough to do research and see what matters to them, because
Mm.
it's a very different playing field. And that's why I come in and basically give people crash courses, show them where the opportunities are, get them ready, prep them down to what should they wear if they're a woman. I had a woman on a call the other day and she was like, I have 2 outfits. You let me know which one should I pick with the colors. So it was quite cool. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, amazing. And it's changed so much, Saudi, in a really relatively short space of time because it was very closed off, as you say. And so, would you say people are now traveling there for holiday, or do you think it's still very business focused at the moment?
I would say yes, the majority is probably business, but there's a big push on tourism.
Mm.
And with tourism, they have a lot of really great initiatives. I mean, like now during the summer, it's tricky because most of the main areas are very hot. So a lot of people tend not to go, although there are some regions in Saudi which have better temperatures that you can also go in the summer and it's actually really pleasant. But a lot of people just don't know that. But tourism is a big one, and it will come, it will really, I think, come round for people. Obviously, there's the piece that we talked about with the alcohol for now,
Mm.
but I do think at one point there will be certain destinations where they will introduce alcohol for tourism. But for
Mm.
now, it is what it is. But they've made a massive push to bring in lots of interesting things into Saudi. First of all, for the local population, because
Mm.
a lot of the locals used to go to Dubai a lot, but mainly because there was no entertainment and nothing to do in Saudi. And now that's completely changed. And I just want to just give a bit of context. So up until 2018, they had no cinemas. They just did not exist.
Wow.
And that seems so alien. And
Mm.
now they have everything. They have boxing, and what they do is in sort of from like October to March is what they call in Riyadh, which is the capital, they call it Riyadh season. They bring in all these boxing fights, they bring in all these concerts. Last year they had a food festival where they brought in like I think 200 or 300 food trucks from all around the world where people could just go to that food festival. And they just have a massive calendar of events. And last year, the brochure for Riyadh season for these sort of like 6 months was 300 pages. They
Wow.
had this many things. They brought in a Disney castle that they imported for the
Oh.
time. They obviously with Ronaldo being in Saudi, they opened up a Ronaldo museum. It was wild. And you had better entertainment there and things to see and things to do than in a lot of the other places. And people were like, this is really exciting. So let's go. I mean, last
Mm.
year when I went and then I came back, I actually went on a work trip And I came back and my son saw some of the pictures. He's like, I really want to go. This looks like fun. So yeah, so I definitely think it will be changing more and more and more.
Yeah, it's fascinating that it has changed. Because even from a female perspective, that women couldn't drive up until when was that? Was that so
2018, same,
2018 as well?
2018.
Yeah. So was it so what changed in 2018 that sort of shifted
Well, it
everything?
started it started much earlier than 2018. It kind of started very much in 2015 when King Salman came more to power, and then it took a couple of years to change a few more things. And then basically one of his sons became the crown prince. And that was quite controversial because he was not normally the way like succession works in the Middle East is it's very cool, I should say.
Mhm.
And it's normally like the oldest son or something like that. And the crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who's now the crown prince, he was not the oldest son. He was actually one of the younger sons, and he's only in his 30s. And when you look at a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, a lot of the crown princes, normally because of that structure, were in their 70s, in their 80s, and they could obviously not relate because what is interesting with Saudi is 63% of the Saudi population is under 35.
Oh, wow.
So you have a massive young population
Mm.
that you need somebody to look after these people and give these people a vision and show them that the country is doing something else. And that's what he brought to the table. And then he launched Vision 2030 in 2016, and that then accelerated the process in bringing in all these projects and developing all these different initiatives and things like that. And that I think was the big change in Saudi, because I can tell you, I used to go to Saudi when you technically couldn't go to Saudi. And as a woman,
Mm.
it was quite a different experience back in the, like, back even like, it's not even that far back. In like
Mm.
2011, you had to get changed on the plane, you had to cover your hair. And then
Mm.
when you were there for business and you wanted to go for dinner and you ended up meeting, let's say, a Saudi man because he was a businessman, you were always very aware that the religious police could come and you could get in trouble because he wasn't your husband or your father. So it was quite something. And it
Mm.
was very different from the rest of the countries because you never had this in Bahrain, you never had this in Qatar, you never had this in the UAE or Dubai. Saudi was very different, but I think it's also to do with because there's a lot of religious context and because it's the country that has all the holy sites. So there was a lot of things going on. But now I think it's a changed country. They call it the rising giant because I think there's so much more that we will see from there.
Yeah, how fascinating. Wow, we'll watch this space for Saudi. That's sounds
Definitely.
fast. Yeah, it sounds amazing. So, thinking about travel and people wanting to go to the Middle East, you help companies, did you say, as opposed to individuals?
It's a mix, actually. Companies where they need a bit more, like they need their team to understand this a bit better, where maybe the team is very hesitant, they don't really know what to think, but also individuals,
Mm.
because I have a community where there's lots of different kind of individuals, people that have like concierge companies, interior designers, financial professionals, and they just want to stay up to date on how they can deal with their clients better and not having to worry that they need to scan the news all the time. So that's what we do. And we will just send them the stuff that they need and say, do this, this has just happened, this is what you should do with this information in order to work on your relationship with your client. And it just won't cost you a lot of time, but the reward will be massive because your relationships will be so much stronger. So it's a real mix. It's not just big companies. It can be actually accessible for anyone.
So, how do you find that they react to the alcohol challenge, the lack of alcohol challenge?
I mean, I think a lot of people know um, that this is the case. Certainly in expats compounds, there is alcohol, but that's obviously behind closed doors. And I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, they opened, I think, a shop in the diplomatic quarter, which is one of the quarters in Riyadh where a lot of the expats are. And if you are a foreign diplomat, you can get alcohol there. But I think overall, it's not been such a massive problem.
Hmm.
And I think people have adapted quite well because they know, okay, this is the thing, this is what we're going to do. And it's like you said, they come up with different alternatives. I mean, when I used to go to dinners, they would say, oh, we're going to serve you Saudi champagne. And essentially what it was sparkling apple juice, but it was very nice. So they used to call it, oh, we're just going to do the Saudi champagne. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can
And
get
how,
alcohol-free beer and things like that in the minibar, you know,
yeah,
so
yeah, there's something. Yeah. And then how about the other countries that you work with? How do people find the because technically, as you say, there isn't as much of it like Qatar, for example. It's not really promulgated, but there are so many expats, so many people that are from the UK, the US, and lots of countries across the world. What reaction do you tend to see from them? Is that one of the first questions that they ask you? Where can we get alcohol from? Or do you find actually it's not a big deal for people that are going into that region?
yes, of course, the question comes up, but it's not normally the first question that comes up. I mean, usually in pretty much all the other countries, you can get it in hotels and things. Although, what I always say, specifically with Qatar and Saudi, Qatar, the local population are way more conservative than the Saudis in terms of how they do business and how their family structures work. And they actually have a lot of versus Dubai, for example, they have a lot of dry hotels where they don't actually serve alcohol at all. And for the local population, this would be a massive no. Like they
Mm,
definitely not. And it's really interesting where you see that sometimes I also have people that I know from the region that drink when they come to Europe, but I have never ever had, for example, a Qatari client drink at all. Never. This has never happened to me in 20 odd years, and I've seen a lot.
mm,
So I think it's a very interesting region, and also every country is very different. Like if you want busyness and go out all the time, and then you should go to places like Dubai, then Doha is not your place because Doha
mm,
is very quiet and it's a very quiet and relaxed place versus even though there is no alcohol in Riyadh, but people are out. You go out at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, the coffee shops are packed, everybody is there, everybody is
wow.
out. And
Mm,
you don't necessarily have that in Qatar. And then you look at places, for example, like Oman, which are very different. Like you go to
mm,
some of the malls in Oman, not necessarily in Muscat, but in some of the other places in Oman, and they feel really authentic because they haven't imported all the big stores that you find in Dubai. Like it's very authentic Middle East. And that's, I
mm,
think, quite refreshing because it's different.
mm. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And so if people wanted to find out more, how can they get in touch with you?
So I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I will definitely give you all the links. And then my website is star-cat.co.uk. And I have all the information there, but you can pretty much find me on all social media, on Instagram and LinkedIn. But LinkedIn is my preferred platform, I would say.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thank you. And as you know, with all guests, I ask the final question, what does thriving alcohol-free mean to you? So I'd love to hear your answer to that, Corina.
I think it just means that there is a different way and you don't have to drink to be social, to be happy, to enjoy yourself. I think there's lots of alternatives and if you want to look after your health and your well-being, I think that's the better way, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And is there any last thing you want to leave the listener with?
I would say, like with anything, have an open mind and maybe just give it a try, that alcohol-free lifestyle, because it's not as bad as everybody is making it out to be.
It's great. You're not giving anything up, you're only gaining. So absolutely, I agree with you.
Totally.
It's not bad at all, and it's all about the joy of missing out versus the fear of missing out. So thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank
Okay,
you so
take
much
care.
for having me.
Well, thank you, Karina. It was so lovely to have you on and hear your story. And it just reminded me of my time in the Middle East. I worked in Dubai for about 6 months. and then went back quite a few times after that for shorter periods of time for work. And it's a really interesting culture. And so I'm really pleased that we had you on just to give a bit of a different flavor. And maybe you might be going to the Middle East for your vacation. So I hope you found that helpful. And if you would like to get in touch with Corina, then please do. Okay, well, I hope you have the best week, and I would love to hear from you if you are wanting to hear something else on the podcast. If you would like to be on the podcast, if you've maybe stopped drinking, then feel free to get in touch. If you want to share your story, I'd love to have you on. And if there's anything different that you might want to hear about, I'm thinking about what the podcast will look like going forward. And so it would be lovely to get some ideas from you, the listener, to understand what you want to hear about and what you enjoy hearing about, so that I can incorporate that into my thinking. Okay, well, I hope you have the best week, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you get alerted every time I drop a new episode. I'd love it if you could rate, review, and share this episode. Feel free to tag me on Instagram at Thrive Alcohol Free and follow me for daily tips. If you would like to work with me, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions and have my group coaching program. If you're not yet ready for coaching, I also have a self-paced online course, which is a companion to my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. All the links are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful week. Take care.